Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Resilience Recipe, A Parent's Guide to Raising Fearless Kids in the Age of Anxiety, by Muniya S. Khanna, Ph.D., and Philip C. Kendall, Ph.D., ABPP. Foreword by David H. Barlow, Ph.D. Narrated by Eleanor Mccormick. Foreword. There has never been a time when guidance on how to effectively support children's mental health and well-being was needed as much as it is today. Over the last 10 years, we have seen a steady and significant increase in rates of depression and anxiety in young people compared to decades prior. In 2020, we experienced one of the most devastating global pandemics in modern history. The already growing problems with depression and anxiety in youth became exponentially worse. The American Psychological Association recently published the report Stress in America 2020, a National Mental Health Crisis. The survey included a sample of 1,026 teens ages 13 to 17, and it reports that Gen Z teens ages 13 to 17 and Gen Z young adults ages 18 to 23 are struggling with uncertainty, experiencing elevated stress, and reporting symptoms of depression. The pandemic brought to light our vulnerabilities, certainly economic, political, and social vulnerabilities, but also our individual vulnerabilities. We learned firsthand that with isolation and uncertainty, and few tools to buffer ourselves against them, both the mind and body suffer. Perhaps this will be the impetus to change the trajectory of how we see and address the mental health crisis in youth. Perhaps now we will be more receptive to the idea that mental health is not something you are born either with or without. It must be built, nurtured, and supported every day in all of us. And those of us who are more vulnerable will require early and targeted support. Perhaps now we will be more likely to look to science to guide us in forging the path forward. The good news in all of this is that children can learn how to take charge of their emotions and be resilient rather than collapse with the weight of fear, loneliness, and uncertainty. The psychological interventions we have developed to facilitate this are effective and enduring, and there is a lower chance of relapse compared to medications. One of these empirically supported interventions is the Coping Cat program for managing anxiety. With its fear plan and its behavioral experiments, Coping Cat is the most well-studied and effective behavioral intervention for anxiety in children and teens. The Resilience Recipe, by Drs. Muniya Khanna and Philip Kendall, brings the components of Coping Cat to parents in a modern and science-informed approach. Why wait until a young adult develops difficulties with anxiety or depression? Why not provide a preventative basis to facilitate a child's emotional development as a child? The Resilience Recipe does just that. It communicates, in a readable style, ways you can achieve realizable goals with your child. Each author is an expert and world-famous scholar on the topic of anxiety and mood difficulties in youth, and they combine their experiences and expertise to provide easy-to-implement and effective strategies for parents, including conversation starters that can help get you started in this resilience-building journey with your child. They also provide the principles behind the strategies, so you feel more informed about what to do and why. These principles are transdiagnostic, which means that they are effective in addressing a range of emotional difficulties, not just one target problem or a specific symptom. In this easy-to-read book, you will learn how to have the important conversations that can help your child build resilience against all types of emotional challenges and develop tools that will serve them for life. Every parent should be aware of the principles described in this manual. David H. Barlow, Ph.D., ABPP, Emeritus Professor of Psychology and Psychiatry, Founder, Center for Anxiety and Related Disorders, CARD, Boston University. Preface. We write this book with a sense of urgency. Our children are struggling, and it's our responsibility to do something about it. Currently, the lifetime prevalence rate of anxiety in children and adolescents in the U.S. is a whopping 32%. Based on a recent epidemiological study, more than 1 in 20 children in the U.S. have an anxiety disorder or depression. 8 out of 10 are reporting excessive stress on a daily basis. From 2003 to 2011-2012, the rate of anxiety in children ages 6 to 17 increased from 5.4% to 8.4%. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the suicide rate among 10 to 24-year-olds has doubled from 2007 to 2017, and suicide is now the second leading cause of death in 15 to 20-year-olds. Since you've picked this book, you probably know this and are concerned too. We applaud you for taking this active step, and we believe this book can give you the tools you need to give your child the gift of resilience. Not only the ability to respond well when faced with adversity, but also the ability to feel confident and capable before the challenges arise. We are clinical psychologists and researchers who have dedicated our lives to understanding and treating anxiety and depression in children and teens. Our work is based on decades of clinical research with children and families across the country and around the world. There is much we still don't know, but we do know a lot about what helps and what does not. We also know that parents are in a great position to learn strategies and create a lifestyle that helps their children develop the skills to navigate stress and new challenges. Therapists, for an hour a week, can and do have a positive impact. School counselors and teachers, although often tasked with meeting the needs of large numbers of students and a wide range of tasks, are sources of great support. But the fact remains that during these years, parents have the greatest impact. Recent research has found that parents, by making changes to how they approach their children's stress and anxiety, help them as much as the children going to therapy. From our vantage point, from within research universities and specialty clinics, it has been frustrating to see that, despite the incredible need, current books, news outlets, and blog posts on parenting don't give parents a clear plan for what they can do at home. Mental health and its treatment are discussed in the media as abnormal and scary at worst, and at best, a mystery. We are always pleased to see characters on popular TV shows and films participating in talk therapy or medication management for mental health problems, famously The Sopranos, Monk, Glee, Silver Linings Playbook, Big Little Lies, Billions, and This Is Us, among others. As this can be very powerful in normalizing and reducing stigma around seeking out mental health support, still, those popular media representations often bestow on therapists or medications an almost magical power, something that can't be replicated in real life. The actor-portrayed scripted therapist gives some key insight and asks one question that clears up everything. How does one find or afford Dr. Wendy Rhodes? These dramas support and build on the popular mystique that surrounds mental health interventions and strategies. There are many top 10 lists, do's and don'ts, and personal stories published, but no formalized clear guidance. Most frustrating are the articles and media that make recommendations and suggest strategies with no data to support that they are actually helpful long term. While parents today may be more open to seeking help for themselves and their children, they are no more likely to know what the help should look like or where to find it. We take the blame. Having been stuck in the academic cycles of grant writing and publishing in research journals, we haven't done enough to inform and empower the general public. We thought our findings published in the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association would make their way into the popular press. We hoped that, in turn, would lead to demand for new policies and systems for providing effective care and educating parents and caregivers. Unfortunately, that information was never broadcast to reach a wider audience. What well-trained therapists offer isn't magical. They use well-understood and well-tested principles to guide their treatment, what we call evidence-based treatment. For over 20 years, therapists and counselors have used cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and the FEAR plan, more on that shortly, to help thousands of children and teens in clinics and schools around the world. But it's likely you haven't heard of these solutions. Until now. We have made it our mission to communicate to parents, and all adults working to support children and teens, everything we have learned through years of clinical work and research. We want to take the mystery out of stress and anxiety management so you can offer your children the gift of control over their emotions. In this book, we share with you the evidence-based, proven strategies for helping children build resilience. It is our hope that we will see strong foundations being built in homes across the country to manage stress and anxiety, helping our children lead lives full of passion, confidence, and well-being. Why are our kids more stressed? Although there are many possible causes for the increased rates of stress, anxiety, depression, and suicide, it's difficult to look backward in time to try to unravel them. Many studies have looked into the question, but the data are hard to interpret because most studies are retrospective and not well controlled. While we've gained a better understanding of risk factors and factors associated with anxiety and depression, which we'll discuss in later chapters, it's extremely difficult to find true causal links. Today's youth certainly face daunting new challenges. This post-9/11 generation was raised with the internet and smartphones. They have lived through a global financial crisis and one of the largest global pandemics in modern history. They have constant access to breaking news of natural disasters related to climate change, terrorism and mass shootings, racial and gender discrimination, economic uncertainty, and the pressures inherent in social media and a consumerist culture. Then there is the ever-increasing pressure to achieve academic and athletic success. We have become all too familiar, almost desensitized, to the pressure cooker analogy of our educational system. Experts predict that this situation will only worsen as the demand for college admissions and scholarships continues to grow in the next decade. We know as parents that we are part of the problem. We allow our fears for our children's future to shape our parenting behaviors, so we find ourselves doubling down on perfectionism, setting extreme achievement expectations, and demanding peak performance of our children from the time they are able to walk, letting our fears of failure and loss lead the way. Instead of being more grateful, peaceful, and benevolent, instead of spreading knowledge, equality, and growth, we support, intentionally or unintentionally, more extreme in-groups and out-groups, widening socioeconomic, racial, and cultural inequities through exclusivity and competition, strengthening our commitment to establishing institutions of higher education as the gatekeepers for career opportunities and success, in hopes that our children will be among those who succeed. We parents are stressed by all of this too. And as parental stress rises, children's stress rises too, creating a compounding cycle of anxiety in the home. Truly, we are all living in an age of anxiety. What can we do about it? Looking forward, there are several very specific things that we can do better. A wide and impressive research literature describes how to help children and adolescents increase resilience, reduce intrusive, unwanted anxiety, and develop the skills to adapt to life's challenges without emotional unraveling. We can give our children this information and create opportunities to practice with them at home, with the right guidance. There are also strategies parents can learn to avoid the traps of a fear and failure mindset that maintain anxiety themselves. Dr. Kendall is the developer and author of the Coping Cat program, the most researched, well-established psychotherapy treatment program for anxiety in youth. His contribution to our understanding of childhood anxiety is immeasurable. Dr. Khanna is among the top clinical psychologists and researchers in anxiety and obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, in children in the country, and is a pioneer of web-based interventions and educational tools for children and parents with anxiety. We are honored and privileged to be able to say that we have been part of some of the most important research and writings in childhood anxiety over the last 30 years, establishing what is now the gold standard of care for children and teens with anxiety in mental health clinics, schools, and hospitals around the world. The Coping Cat is based on the principles of CBT, which has been rigorously studied in both children and adults and shown to be incredibly effective in helping manage mood and anxiety. We'll consider the principles of CBT and the key parts of effectively managing emotion in detail in the chapters that follow. The Coping Cat treatment program teaches kids the FEAR plan, using an acronym to help them remember 4 steps they can take to face fear, adversity, and self-doubt. FEAR stands for, what am I feeling? Expecting bad things to happen? Attitudes and actions that can help, and results and rewards. By walking themselves through the FEAR steps, which are based on the key components of CBT, children can reduce worry and anxiety and create a plan for approaching uncertainty rather than avoiding it. In this book, we will first explain the key principles of creating long-term resilience. Then we give guidance for applying the principles, walking you step by step through the FEAR plan. Our suggested conversation starters will help you start the conversations that communicate these principles in clear, kid-friendly language. Throughout, we share everything we have learned from our decades of research and clinical practice. We also want to acknowledge that we use the term parent throughout this book, but are speaking to all guardians, caregivers, and advocates in our children's lives. Continue on to learn the specific things you can do for your child, starting today. MK and PCK. Part 1. The Ingredients. Chapter 1. The Gift of Resilience. There is no getting around that turning bad things into good things is totally up to you. Deepak Chopra. Our main goal in writing this book is to translate everything we know about resilience building and anxiety management in children from research and our clinical work into practice steps that you as parents can use at home. We feel it is important to give you not only a list of strategies, but the principles behind these strategies. Every strategy we suggest should have a rationale and guiding theory about how and why it helps. We know, from having trained thousands of therapists, that when you understand these principles, you can feel more empowered to use the strategies to support your children than you would through trying to follow a series of top 10 tips. So before we get into detailing the FEAR plan and coping strategies to share with your child, we will first give you an overview of the principles of resilience. Times change, circumstances change, environments change, children mature, but the principles of human behavior stay the same. No matter your child's age or particular circumstances, you'll know what to do, because the principles will be the same. Why choose a CBT approach? The strategies for building resilience and coping with anxiety we describe in this book are based, again, on cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. CBT has impressive research support and is a widely used intervention for many psychological problems. We recommend it for childhood and adult anxiety because it has been found to be incredibly effective. The Coping Cat, the most studied treatment for anxiety in children and teens, uses the acronym FEAR to guide children through safe, proven strategies to manage and decrease their stress and anxiety. It has also been found to reduce the risk of problems later in life, including depression, substance use, and anxiety disorders in adulthood. It is the gold standard treatment, and best of all, anyone can learn and teach these strategies. We want to avoid preaching CBT. The practices of mindfulness, acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, Buddhist philosophy, and other world philosophies share many of the same principles. This underscores the truth that specific terminology is less important than the universal principles that underlie them. We are using science to guide which strategies and recommendations we make, and CBT provides a blueprint that is easy to understand and has proven effective in helping children build resilience. The goal of CBT, as with most psychological theories of well-being, is to help people become aware of their thoughts and patterns of behavior that may be maintaining negative emotions and low self-worth. Awareness of our patterns takes away the strength and automatic nature of our response. It gives us time to consider and choose alternative ways of thinking and behaviors that allow a different, more adaptive, positive response, so we can create a lifetime of peace and joy. The cognitive behavioral theory on which CBT is based has a rich scientific and theoretical history that has survived the ages. Understanding the principles of this theory will give you a strong foundation on which to build resilience at home. The foundation: cognitive behavioral theory. Cognitive behavioral theory is the foundation for the strategies and recommendations we discuss in this book. This theory combines the key principles of behaviorism, or learning theory, that evolved through the work of such great scholars as Skinner, Pavlov, Watson, Thorndike, and Bandura, together with cognitive theory as penned by Aaron T. Beck and expanded by others including Ellis and Meichenbaum. As with any theory of human personality, cognitive behavioral theory must address the hows and whys of human behavior and emotion. Why do we feel what we feel? Why do we do what we do? Let's break down this model and dig in a little further. We'll see how our thoughts, learning history, and biology work together to influence our emotions and our actions, and subsequently shape our understanding of ourselves and our world. Then, we'll discuss how we can apply these principles to equip and empower our children to be resilient in the face of any challenge. Our thoughts, cognition. Why do we feel what we feel? Cognitive theory suggests that our thoughts, cognition, have a very powerful influence on our behavioral, emotional, and physical response. It recognizes that our thoughts about ourselves and our situations, or our interpretation of our situation, can change our experience of that situation. We do not all have the same response to the same situation, because for each of us, our thoughts, or how we interpret the situation, are different. Cognitive theory brings to light an incredibly powerful and key element for understanding human well-being. It highlights that it is our thoughts that create our emotional experience, our reality, not our situation or the outside world. Though we may have unimaginable wealth, if we're focused on a loss, we can feel hopeless and deprived. We can be surrounded by friends and family, but if focused on a rejection, we can feel alone and unloved. This reminds us that there are really no truths, outside of the laws of nature and science, that are real or fact. Our laws, values, priorities, beliefs, we have either chosen them, or agreed to them, or accepted them. This implies that we can challenge anything that we are thinking. For example, I value the opinion of my boss, and I feel anxiety when I anticipate negative feedback. What are my rules of failure and success? Where did these rules come from? Do I really agree with them? Are there alternate ways to define or measure failure and success? What do I define as negative feedback? Where did these definitions and rules come from? Is there another perspective or an alternate way to think about this feedback? Many of us live our lives in reaction mode, simply going from situation to gut reaction. This assumes that we have no control over our inner experience, that the world is acting on us, and we are just trying to react in whatever way we can to survive. Situation to emotion. Sitting in class to anxious. But from the perspective of cognitive theory, we see that it is actually our thoughts that are creating our emotional experience. The world is happening around us. We are interpreting it, and that interpretation is bringing about our emotional experience. Situation to thoughts to emotion. Sitting in class to, if I make a mistake, everyone will think I'm stupid, to anxious. This is our greatest weakness, our kryptonite. Because we have the ability to create an emotional response just with our thoughts, we can create negative emotions without leaving our chair. Unlike other mammals on the planet, as far as we know, we don't need a negative situation or experience to create a negative emotional response. We don't need to actually be chased by a bear. We can just anticipate this happening, or reflect on a prior negative experience, or imagine one. We can feel anxious and miserable anytime and anywhere, regardless of what is going on around us. Situation to thoughts to emotion. Sunday night at home to, if I make a mistake, everyone will think I'm stupid, to anxious. But this is also our superpower. Because we can reflect, anticipate, and choose the focus of our thoughts, we have the power to choose our emotional response as well as our behavioral response. We are able to choose our response. Therefore, we determine the distance between the emotion we want and the emotion we have. We can create the emotional response we want as soon as we choose the interpretation that supports it. Situation to chosen thoughts to emotion. Sunday night at home to, ugh, school tomorrow. It's okay. If I make a mistake, it will feel bad, but then the feeling will pass. I'm just learning. To content. Our learning history. Why do we do what we do? Behavioral theory suggests that our behaviors or our actions are a result of what we learned from the consequences of past and ongoing experiences, or our learning history. For example, if you told a lie and it got you out of trouble, from that experience you learn that lying is a behavior that can be effective in getting you out of trouble. Once learned, the behavior repeats in the face of similar stimuli or circumstances. You might choose lying whenever there's a chance, and with repetition, you learn that it is a helpful strategy. Over time, the relationship between the behavior and circumstance strengthens, and eventually, we form patterns of behavior, sometimes called habits. You may become fluent in lying in more and more types of situations. Learning theory explains how our habits come to be, and why, despite what we know to be the most logical or right thing to do, our behaviors follow old patterns, and these can be so difficult to change. Key to learning theory is the notion of shaping, that every response is shaped by the consequences of that response. For instance, if someone says, "You look great in blue," you may find yourself wearing more blue. If you felt good when lots of people liked your photo on social media, you may be quicker to post another similar photo. Your behavior was shaped, in this case increased, behavioral science would say it was reinforced, by the positive feedback you received. If you feel relaxed and less troubled by work when you watch TV, you may be quicker to turn on the TV. Bottom line, if what you do makes you feel good or less distressed, you are more likely to do it again, even if the behavior is negative. We often find ourselves checking our phones, even when we know it's not the right time. Phones offer a lot of positive reinforcement for checking. We feel reassured that we are liked and included, and/or that we are not missing out on important information. Checking our phone also offers a brief escape from difficult tasks. And yes, the opposite is true. If what you do makes you feel uncomfortable or distressed, you'll be less likely to do it again. If someone makes a rude or jokingly negative comment,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?